Because what we're going to do now is we're going to, actually I should say, the coffee machine over there, I think is still working, switched on, because I know I curtailed coffee a little bit to try and get things back on track. So please don't feel bad about sneaking over there and grabbing yourself a cup of coffee while we're talking, because we won't think badly of you for it. We just might all turn and stare when it hisses. But anyway, what we're going to do now is, rather than having people present at you after, we're going to have a panel discussion, and we're going to have another one later on as well. And this is going to focus on some of the issues about humans working alongside bots and working alongside automated systems, and how it actually works within organisations. I'm going to be joined on stage for the conversation by Robert Walliser from IAG, Foad Fadaghi, who is an analyst and managing director of Telsyte, a highly respected research analyst firm, and Sukalp Sharma, who is the newly appointed chief executive of Mindfields. And so please join me in welcoming them to the stage. We'll take a seat all friendly. Have you Yann Walter? Oh, Yann Walter's going to do. Oh, okay. There we go. Why not? I'll stand up. How about that? You know, I'm not the talent here. Come on, come and sit here, Foad. There we go, Yann. There we go. Okay. Nice. Sit yourself down. Come on. Righto. So, in terms of having a conversation about this, I think we've spoken a lot about the benefits of automation and also the opportunities provided for humans in this world. But it's also important to remember the humans in the equation. And I guess that's the point of this session. We haven't spoken with IAG. Before Yann was on, I thought you were going to be the only end user organisation. So I was going to start with you, just to get a bit of an indication of where you are on the journey to automation, RPA at IAG, but then also how you've included your existing staff in that, so that people aren't taken by surprise and feel like they still have a valuable part to play.
Yes. Okay. So we kind of, I suppose, it's very similar to that curve that was just shown earlier. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think I'm mic'd up. Yeah. That Mohit showed. So we kind of sort of early stages of sort of delivering robots into our processes. We're also looking at where we can apply machine learning, artificial intelligence, and the like. Not too dissimilar from, I suppose, what Sukalp will be doing as well from the earlier presentation. So how are we taking our staff on the journey? And I think it's an interesting one in terms of how people actually perceive automation and robotics. Interestingly enough, what we found is they see it less of a threat sometimes to offshoring, and they seem to have a bigger fear for that. But I do think it is beholden on us as an organisation to help our staff get across what the challenges might be for the future of work with automation. We've got a number of activities that we've established in terms of programs about how do we enable our staff to understand what the future of work might look like, and how might they best prepare themselves for that. And we really do four things there. And the first one is we try and help them understand what the future of work might look like. As we've been talking about in it's conversation earlier, what might be the impacts on society and indirectly to them. The second thing is we try and help them understand more about themselves and what they might do. In particular, what their purpose is, because we find if you can align this with someone's purpose, it just becomes a lot more impactful and gets them more motivated to want to do it. The third thing is about making sure that we hold our managers to account. We've got a structured plan where all managers have to make sure they have development conversations, and those are structured in a certain way to make sure that conversations are being had with staff to help them along. And lastly, to make sure we've got the appropriate programs in place that we can actually, using modern learning techniques, to actually provide information to people who want to learn. So
yeah, and Foad, you obviously in your line of work, you speak with lots of organisations to try and get a handle on what's going on. Do you get a sense that there's disparity among preparedness for the future of work across organisations, or is everyone roughly at the same stage?
Look, I think a lot of organisations are in the pilot phases when it comes to automation. So we're at a stage where it's very exploratory. Organisations are still trying to find their feet around how they deal with this issue. I guess the big challenge is what happens when there is possibly an economic downturn, where there's some sort of external forces, increased competition in the market, and mergers and acquisitions, and all these kinds of things which drive organisational change. I guess the challenge from an employee perspective is how might that automation or plan around automation will impact them during the downturn. So during the good times, it tends to be something that there can be a lot of positivity around. I guess it's how organisations deal with their employees in the downturn. I think that's going to be an interesting one to see what happens in the horizon.
Do you have a perception from having observed industry on what it might mean? Because I mean, at the moment we've heard plenty of people talking so far today about the fact that it ameliorates a job, makes it better for them. Is that the uniform experience you think that people are going to see?
What you actually probably see is an explosion in jobs related to support and I guess manage the transformation that organisations are going through. So it should be net positive. I think the thinking is that it should be net positive for employment. But I guess the challenge is that cultural and societal evolution is slower than technological evolution. So while we can put up charts that show by 2020, we're going to go into full-blown automation, I'm not sure if culturally a lot of these organisations are really prepared to know what that means, or in fact maybe are glossing over that a little bit by saying that maybe it's it's just part of an overall digital transformation strategy. So I think don't get me wrong, I certainly believe that automation will certainly happen and organisation will benefit from it, and even employees will benefit from it. But I think that just navigating through those initial phases are going to be a little bit of a challenge for particularly larger organisations.
Yeah, Malta, you obviously presented earlier about the progress you've made over the last 5 years. Has the attitude of the people working within ANZ changed over that time? Was it something that had to be introduced gently, so to speak? How did your employees react? Initially when there was articles in newspapers, for example, about machine armies and things like that.
I don't think this was deliberate, but I don't think we introduced it gently. We were very open about it from day one, and I think more than fear, people were puzzled. What does that mean? How is it going to work? Is it science fiction in a way? And a lot of the early discussions were how to make it reality, how to get people on a journey, and then you have the excitement. So you start saying to people, you're going to have to focus on more on value add. We're going to take away some of your manual processes, etc. Then frustration comes in because you don't always get it right the first time, and then people start realizing, how to make the technology theirs and make it work for them as well.
Sukalp, you obviously look across a lot of industry. Before Mindfields, you were in the consulting world. What are some organisations doing better than others? Have you seen many mistakes in how they organisations have tried to introduce automation?
Essentially, if you look at this fourth industrial revolution, it is a combination of human ingenuity and the power and precision of machines. Now, like all other industrial revolutions, the basis of this is human beings teaching machines what they do and how they do it. And then, so what is different about this one is, not only are we teaching machines how to do things and what to do things, but the machines are slowly, replacing it, and we're finding ourselves increasingly working with machines. And wait till the machines start making decisions. So that is the whole fear factor associated with this, and there's a lot of hype and articles in the media about it. So what we've seen organizations do well, in some cases where they've done well, is to walk on this change management journey and train and educate their staff on how to do this. But I think it's easier said than done, because it's as it is hard to get human beings to work with other human beings, and in this case we're talking about them working with machines. most organizations where I've seen it done well, they've started managing their digital workforce like human workforce.
Right.
So one of our client organizations sets annual KPIs for bots and goes and introspects why they were not able to achieve the benefits and at the end of the year. And then they put that in the next year development plan for bots.
Does that actually have a positive impact, or is it a bit of a gimmick?
It certainly does, because for one, it's a good way of measuring benefit realization. Most projects benefit realization does not happen naturally and is not done well. So if you think about in terms of a business case, and has some dollar value of benefits that will deliver, and if you have a mechanism which is laid out in the form of a performance management plan, then it gives you a natural means to assessing that and evaluating that and course correcting. And like all other things, lessons learned and correcting your course and learning from the past mistakes is a very important part of it. And organizations that do it well, they take care of that part well.
Yeah, and we're talking about the opportunities and I guess threats for the people working in organisations in the automation era. How big a challenge is training? I mean, we've spoken about skill shortages. Have you got people working for you that have the skills that you need, or is there a big scramble on to try and get people up to speed?
Yeah, I think it is difficult to find sometimes the right skills. And I think if I think about some of the challenges we're going to have going forward, and I think the education systems are somewhat of a challenge. I mean, my eldest son has actually just started university, and I look at the whole course they do. It takes 4 years to come up with a degree. He seems to be at home half the time. It's very much sort of a sheep dip kind of approach. And how relevant is that to kind of a world that is accelerating with change, right? So I think it's about how do we create more bespoke kind of learning experiences to get the skills we need. Because I think we focus well on general skills, but we're all individuals and we need different things. And I think particularly with digitisation and looking for the skills that we need, things like digital dexterity, it's about agility, it's about open mindset. So it's not always about the technological nous and being able to program. Yes, that's useful, but being open to change, being able to pivot, prepare to fail, and then try something different. I think the kind of skills we need to be teaching people, and I just don't think a lot of that's happening yet. I still think we're very much entrenched in some of those traditional top-down education approaches.
What about at ANZ? Where are the most useful people being found from within the organisation, or have you had to hire in a lot of people from outside since you've been looking to do more automation?
I'll answer the question differently, actually. One of the things that we've been thinking about, and when we embarked on the journey, is what are the roles that we may need once we start rolling out automation, and we couldn't figure out. We couldn't honestly. We couldn't say we're going to have data architects and all those things. We had no idea how many would we need. So the way we looked at it is we looked at the competencies that we thought we would require. So I'm gonna go again, the agile mindset, human-centered design, process engineering, coding. We didn't really care about people knowing, UiPath or AA or whatever. As long as you know 2 languages, we were okay. And we started putting all those things together, and we said, where are we going to find those people? And so we had to take a two-prong approach. One was go and hire people who are, basically tick the box on what we wanted, or tick the majority of the box that we wanted. Then we had to train our own staff as well, or some of our staff tick the box as well, and develop them to go into aggregation of those capabilities rather than roles. And we are still evolving as we do it. Another interesting thing that we're doing is we've taken a pool of, and that's in in our technology and in our data space.
Mm.
We've taken 60 individuals out of the business, I should say, and those people that put their hand up and say, we'd like to be retrained.
Okay.
We'd like to become engineers. And I think we had more than 600 people apply for 60 positions.
Okay.
So it shows you the interest of people wanting to retrain and do things. And it's a 6-month program where we're focusing on building capabilities, not for technology only, but to re-inject them in different parts of the business.
Yeah.
This is ongoing, but I hope that's some of the things which, as I said before, we're building a lot of rockets, and some of them will be right.
It suggests to me that not only is it an area that people are enticed by, but also that there's a lot of people that have concerns about their longevity in their existing roles. Foad, you speak with lots of organisations for your studies. Do you have a sense that there's a different way people view their careers in the current era and how relaxed they feel in their current jobs?
It's really interesting, Paul, because I conduct a lot of training sessions, looking at different types of technologies and schooling executives and all kinds of organisations. And the interesting thing is, you just mentioned that you had 60 spots and you had a tenfold number of people. That kind of, as Paul points out, speaks to the level of concern maybe that people have about their roles going forward. So I think a lot of organisations have difficulty in giving either confidence or otherwise around the future of the roles in the organisation. Now, some of that is probably unfounded, but on the other hand, there is a general fear. I guess a great example. I did a training session with an organisation that announced a whole lot of redundancies before the training, like a couple of weeks beforehand. And it was the most glum, difficult to excite session that you can imagine. Everyone was like, why is he saying that? Why is he telling me this? What's the secret message behind this digital training behind it? Why are they telling us this? And so I guess handling that is very, very important. In terms of where on the cycle you bring in the training, the material that goes into it, and again that level of comfort that you give organizations need to give to people around possibly the pace of change that might come around. It might be fast, but I think it comes down to being honest around that with the employee.
And in terms of Sukalp, obviously, in your role, you're not necessarily selling technology, but you're selling processes. You're selling advice. Do you feel anything from your side of the fence on any duty towards the existing staff within an organisation?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So. When we go and sell something to a client, we don't sell technology, we don't sell consulting, we sell a value proposition. And oftentimes that value proposition is founded upon the principles of freeing up capacity from the mundane, mechanical tasks, so that people can upskill themselves and contribute higher or contribute more productively. One of our clients, in fact, we've done a lot of work for Australia Post, and apologies for quoting you, Craig, but I think this is one of my favorite client quotes. So after we had implemented these processes, Craig said, well, what I'm most happy about is that I never knew these people were capable of doing the higher end, more intelligent work that they're doing now. So basically, we directly contributed to uplifting the intelligence of the organization. So as has been the theme today and has been pointed out a number of times, there is an element of agility required, there is an element of upskilling required, but this should more be sold as an exciting proposition, a proposition to develop for the betterment of the staff and the organization.
Yeah, I guess this is the journalist in me asking the simple question, but we'll wrap up the panel in a second. Is your sense, and this is open to anyone here, is that ultimately automation will lead to more or less jobs?
It's interesting what stats you read, right? So, yeah, I was looking at some of the stats actually before this session. So you see anything from about 2030. Or like 80% of jobs will be impacted by automation. Maybe some might say lower figures. I think it's a guess. Yeah. But then on the other side, you also look at stats that say by 2030, More than 50% of the jobs don't exist yet, right? So yes, we're destroying roles potentially, if you can call it that, but we're creating more along the way. And I think it's, as you said earlier as well. So I think the change is there. And I think just to know, we talk about the fourth industrial revolution. We've been through this 4 times before, guys. If you think of, the first presentation where we sort of had the video of what each one of those entailed, there were machines in all of them, right? So they've always been kind of a threat to our workforce to an extent. But through every kind of revolution, industrial revolution, things got better, right? It's hard to say we've gone backwards. So yes, it does impact people, and I think what's different this time is maybe just the speed of it. We've got to probably adapt quicker than what we did in some of those others, so there's probably less time for reflection, right? But I think inevitably the world's ended up in a better place. So you can either, that maybe doesn't always sell as many newspapers though, when you sell good news. But I think you can take an optimistic view of it, or you can take a pessimistic view of where we're going, and the facts are to support both.
Yeah. Did you have a view on that, Yamamoto?
I think it will lead to more, personally. I don't want to take a bet on how much, but different jobs and different business models as well. And you think of the third industrial revolution, one of the big change as opposed to the second one was how the work was organized and the organization of the work. I think we will look at different types of organization. The role of the state will potentially be different into our society. The role of the banks as well. I think we think about our role in the new economy as well. Where do we fit? With decentralized currencies and all kind of things. Like there's a lot going on in that space. But I'm optimistic by nature, and I think people will adapt and will learn and come up with more knowledge and wealth at the end.
Was there any questions from the floor before we wrap up? Just down the front here. He probably shouts because unless they're. Oh no, there we go.
Is it on?
Yes, it's on.
Thank you. Geeta Charan from IMP. I run the Center of Excellence for Automation at IMP. We've been on the journey for about 3 years now, and we've got quite a large number of bots in production. My question was around run costs and maintenance. One of my toughest stakeholders mentioned that robotics is like a noiseless service delivery, which is nice to hear, but behind the scenes it's not so noiseless. There's constant change to underlying applications that we have to do. There's the cost of licensing, and then there's people managing the robots. How are you finding the cost of run for robots?
Well, first we put it in our business case up front. So we right away when we embarked on the journey of automation, we costed it, and we said we're going to need support, maintenance, and we're also going to need that we didn't do at the beginning, but we did along the way. We're going to need to integrate it with our IT architecture and our IT infrastructure. So all our bots are, for lack of a better word, catalogued with IT, which understands and does regression testing. There's some words, it's very hard for me to say. Regression testing on all our bots before they apply change within the organization. It takes a lot of rigor. It slows down, but this is the right thing to do if you don't want your maintenance costs to blow out, basically.
So my question was around the cost.
I will not give you a dollar number.
I'm not asking for the dollar number. My question is, in the end, the processes that have been automated, the cost of run, does it justify it? Is it still a beneficial proposal?
It does. Overall, it does for us. And you have to look at the complexity of the processes and where they're being undertaken as well.
I'll just add 1 or 2 points from my experience. Just like anything else, all other projects, like you rightly pointed out, there is an element of underlying applications. So the bot only works on what it sees on the screen, and if what it sees on the screen changes without informing the bot, then the bot will be puzzled, and it will not do what it's supposed to do. So it is about putting those processes around that. It's about maintaining that cross-reference of this bot maps to 15 different applications, and if anything is changing on those applications, then, well, certainly the CEO should be informed upfront. So putting those processes in place which minimize the cost of or optimize the cost of running it. I know it's a bit of a theoretical answer, but these easy things are often the hardest to do. And we see it over and over again in organizations that these structures are not very well defined. It's the complexity of organizations mapped with the complexity of their underlying application farms, which make these simple things difficult. On that, and I'm going to do a bit of selling now, we're going to talk about one of the applications that we're launching today and how it enables the optimization of that journey. But again, regardless of with or without that application, the underlying point is that if we do those 3 or 4 things right, which is having the right accountabilities, having the right governance structure, and the reason why I say accountabilities and governance structure is that if someone's making a change to an application and the other parts of the organization are not getting informed about it, then there should bloody well be consequences for that. So they should conform to the agreed and laid down rules, and that's where the importance of a governance structure, the importance of having a well-oiled roles and responsibilities framework come in. So it's a number of things, but when done correctly, certainly support and maintenance is a small part of the whole thing, and the values, the benefits outnumber the costs.
Thank you very much for the question. And we'll wrap up the panel there. So thanks very much to the guys. I should mention as well with Foad on the third, you should look up some of the Telsyte research. They've done some really interesting stuff on the future of work. Most of it's available on your website or abridged versions. Well worth a read. Please join me in thanking the guys, and Sukalp is going to stay up on the stage and speak to you as well.